Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chairman McClendon.
Here.
Vice Chair Robinson. Mrs. Hill.
Here.
Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Sermon.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Dr. Wingate.
Here.
Thank you.
Superintendent Dr. Robertson.
Here.
Okay, we have the following request to amend the agenda. Under bids and contracts, remove the MOU incarcerated youth policy, Silverdale. Under board policies, high school athletics coaches, you'll see the changes there. Under board matters, remove item discussion for request of funding for facilities. And then under appearances, add Aaron Foles and Rosie Fitzgerald. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Perez.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mrs. Sermon.
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Dr. Wingate.
Yes.
Chairman McClendon.
Yes. That will bring us down to our pledge to the flag and meditation from Ms. Jill Hall, principal of Daisy Elementary.
Good evening. My name is Jill Hall from Daisy, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. In the light of the recent events, I would like to take a moment to both thank and encourage all educators as we prepare to begin a new school year. Working with children each day is both rewarding and exhausting, but I often remind myself how many other career paths have the daily opportunity to positively impact the course of a child's life. That, you see, is the power of great teachers. The impact of their kindness, devotion, and dedication to improve the future of our society through youth knows no bounds. Even throughout a global crisis, teachers demonstrated their devotion to their students, going above and beyond their educator roles to accommodate for the chaos happening in our world. We were reminded that the influence of these silent heroes has always extended beyond the classroom, stirring memories of our own special moments with our favorite educators. During Eisenhower's presidency, James Michener, author of numerous bestsellers and winner of a Pulitzer Prize, was invited to a celebrity dinner at the White House. In a letter, Michener declined to attend. It stated, "Dear Mr. President, I received your invitation 3 days after I had agreed to speak a few words at a dinner honoring the wonderful high school teacher who taught me to write. I know you will not miss me at your dinner, but she might at hers." A week later, Michener received a handwritten reply from the understanding president. In his lifetime, a man lives under 15 or 16 presidents. But a really fine teacher comes into his life but rarely. Go and speak to your teacher at your teacher's dinner. To all of the amazing teachers out there, thank you for all you do. Our world is a much brighter and more hopeful place with you leading our growth. As we look forward to the first day of the 2022-23 school year, I leave you with words by Jenny Han. I've always loved the first day of school better than the last day. First are best because they are beginnings. Because I believe in collaboration, I wanted to invite my assistant principal, Jennifer Rogers. She's going to lead us with the pledge.
Please stand and join me for the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jill. I hear you have two of the smartest kids in Hamilton County at your school. Just saying.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll move on to our Exemplars of Excellence with Brandon Allen.
Good evening, Chairman McClendon, members of the board, and Dr. Robertson. I want to introduce you to someone you may already know, but if you don't, I want to introduce you to Paul Mashburn and his wife, Miss Betty. Paul has driven the bus in Hamilton County. This will be his 50th year, going on to start his 50th year in Hamilton County. While Mr. McClendon's coming over, I want to say something real quick about Paul. Paul has driven in the Tiftonia area for many years, and everybody knows Paul. Even when I was a kid, when Paul's buses would show up to pick you up on a field trip, and still to this day, they look like they've just rolled off the showroom floor. His buses are shiny. They've got the latest and greatest LED lights on them. Paul called me a couple weeks ago and says, "Brandon, I got a new light on my bus." So I had to get in the car and go drive to Tiftonia and see Paul's light. Paul, congratulations. We appreciate you.
Mr. Mashburn, you're not going to say anything after 50 years? Mr. Mashburn drove for us a lot when I was principal at Lookout Valley Elementary, and just was, not only a great driver, but just a good person, and truly cared about kids. And this is the first time I've ever seen him not willing to talk. So.
He was going to.
Thank you for your years of service to our students. Next, we have our own colleague that we are going to recognize, Ms. Hill. I'll say a couple words, and then Dr. Robertson and anyone else on the board. This is her last meeting. Next meeting in August, she will be taking your daughter to college, so she will not be here with us. I'll say I've enjoyed working with you. We came into this board together. I remember us sitting in a boardroom with Dr. Johnson and his team, and me and you are getting mounds and mounds of binders thrown at us. It's been a roller coaster, and I've enjoyed working with you and the journey we've been on. Dr. Robertson has, I guess, a gift for you and a plaque.
It's a gift from all of us, but we do have a plaque for you. I just want to say thank you for supporting kids in District 6, but also for being in tune with what the needs of Hamilton County are. You have held us accountable, you've asked tough questions, and you have added so much value to this board and this community. So the plaque says, to Jenny Hill, appreciation for your commitment and service to the Hamilton County Board of Education, September of 2018 through August of 2022. So I'd like to present this to you.
Do I go up there?
You can say it. I'll read it.
Y'all have never had a plaque before, and I've never had a standing ovation. That's amazing. I've been nervous thinking about going. I've been shaky all day. In fact, I wrote some notes. If they're illegible, that's why. But Chairman McClendon was kind enough to let me say a few words. You know me, I always want to say a few words. So I actually wrote some things down because it was important. So 5 years ago, because I am a planner, 5 years ago I sat with my family and discussed the possibility of running for office. How could I make a difference? Would I ruin my daughter's high school years if I was serving on school board those 4 years? Would I be away a lot? Though Joe Smith, we never did question if I'd be able to balance it all. We felt confident I'd be able to do that. But we did we have the stomach for politics and for being public? So running for office is difficult, but I think my colleagues here would tell you that serving is even harder. I am humbled by the people of District 6, and tonight I want to say thank you. Thank you for trusting me to elevate our voices on the school board, and for further trusting me now to help lead our city. Service has left me with a lot of fond memories. Sharing stories with the students at Lookout Valley Elementary School and Brown Academy kindergartners. Celebrating Field Day at Lookout Mountain Elementary. And Band Book Week at Center for Creative Arts. Spraying hair with layers of color and glitter at Normalpalooza. And building marshmallow straw towers on STEM Day at Dawn Academy, or Dawn program. Fine-tuning resumes at Lookout Valley Middle High, and cheering on the Band of Gold during their halftime show. And getting to know my school board colleagues at TSBA conferences, even if I never did win a door prize, Tucker. He really pretty much promised me that everybody won a door prize, but I never win anything. And testifying in Nashville to advocate for better on behalf of Hamilton County students. So our family, I've said it many times, we share these ideals. that every person is made in the image of God and therefore is due dignity and respect, that you have to work hard for your goals and to speak the truth, even if your knees are knocking. And each of these has fortified me as I've served Hamilton County. That plus Lexapro and a good therapist. I was elected with a mandate to elevate education. Over 4 years, we've seen a disciplined approach to teaching students our Tennessee standards, and that work is like compound interest. Year after year, it will deliver gains for our students. I've worked, often with knocking knees, to forward the cause of equity in Hamilton County schools, and led the policy committee as we developed and unanimously passed an equity policy, which sets the tone for all future work in our schools. District 6 is also home to some of the most dilapidated school facilities in the county. I pressed for a third-party facility study and stood calm, almost, in the whirlwind as they pulled back the veil on the predicament that decades of neglect had put us in, and considered how our community can be good stewards of the money that we have to invest in facilities. Choosing not to run for a second term was difficult. I believe that education is the pathway out of poverty, and that lifelong learning is the heart of civil dialogue. That said, I am a woman committed to impact. These 4 years of service have allowed me to be a small part of major impact for our students and for the future students. I'm proud to have been a part of this body, and I'm energized that the work I'm doing now is focused on increasing access to early childhood education, to protecting housing affordability, and to be a voice for neighbors across our community who want to ensure that Chattanooga and Hamilton County are a place where everyone belongs. I will miss all of you. I won't miss meetings until 9, but I will miss all of you. And I trust that you will strive to lead with fidelity, always moving toward academic excellence and access to opportunity, regardless of the way that the political winds blow. Thank you so much, Chairman McClendon, for giving me a few minutes to share my heart with you. And thank you, Dr. Robertson, and your whole team. Your leadership and commitment to excellence. I'm just a phone call away if ever anybody needs me. Thanks, guys.
Ms. Jones.
I just want to say that Jenny, when I found out you were going to run for office, I was like, Jenny Kellogg, because Jenny and I were schoolmates at CSAS. But I would like to say this has been a journey, and I too will miss you being on the dais with us. Although you do have lots of Post-it notes and questions, they are valid and they come from you just wanting to know so you can advocate better. I think I would like to say on behalf of our CSAS, I believe that our teachers, our administrators, and our peers are very proud of you and the work that you have done. I am proud to have known you before you were Jenny Hill, and to continue to keep up the good work.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes, Jenny, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss some of the back and forth, even though we didn't agree on very much at all. But that's okay. That's okay. You represent your district. I represent mine. That's fine. But anyway, I will miss you, and I wish you well.
Mr. Wingate.
Jenny, thank you for your passion. It's when you said impact, that resonates with me. I appreciate folks that are seeking impact. People do things for lots of reasons, and it's not always to leave something better than the way they found it. So thank you for that.
Mr. Prez.
Jenny as well, thank you. You're the first of the board members I met probably about close to 8 to 10 years ago. Probably 10 years ago when you were serving on Metropolitan Ministries. That's where I first met you on their board. CNE on their board.
multiple places where you have just played a role of service. I've told you I'm upset. I told you when I got on this board, and I think the next week you announced that you were stepping away. I'm like, what? That's the effect I have on people. But I can't wait to see how else you continue serving the community. So thank you so much. You really do pour yourself out, and I'm honored to have served with you for a couple of years. So thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Jeannie, I remember about 4 years ago you bought me a donut. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
Yeah. Well, we're going to miss you, and it's been a pleasure serving with you. And what I look forward to is watching your young daughter. That kid is impressive, so I look forward to watching her grow up.
Mr. Walker?
Miss Hill. I know it was a short time. My first memory, I came in, I tried to make a statement, and you said, that's not correct because I write things down. I went back and watched the video, and you were correct. So, but as a father of 4 daughters, your ability to articulate and carry a room and deliver your message, I hope that my daughters are outspoken and speak that way, the way that you do, whether we agree on things or not. And if your knees are ever knocking any time around me, I've never seen it. I'm always amazed at how you articulate. I hope I could be more like you whenever I do things and lead things, but it's been an honor to serve, and I've learned some things from you, whether, like I say, we butted heads or not. It was an honor to serve with you.
Thank you all. I am genuinely touched. Never have I had an experience like this, so thank you very, very much. It means a lot.
I thought Monday you promised dance or something like that. I'm just
And one thing, Joe Wingate, I just have to say, when I say it's hard to serve on a board, it's hard to serve on a board. And Joe Wingate and his presence, Joe, you have talked me off more than one ledge. When we have called, and I got Post-it notes all over the place with Joe Wingate's wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you. That will move us on to presentations. We'll have our EdConnect presentation.
Thanks, Chairman McClendon. I'm going to go ahead and ask Deb Socia with the Enterprise Center and Evan Freeman with EPB to go ahead and come up as I start this presentation. So this is a end of the year, the end of year 2 update for HCS EdConnect. If you'll remember, it's a community effort, private, public partnership to ensure that kids across Hamilton County had access to high-speed internet. It obviously started with the onset of the pandemic and the immediate need there, but what we've learned and we'll share with you tonight is that it has a bigger impact than just that response. So 16,000 students today are connected to high-speed internet through this family, or through this partnership, and that's more than 1/3 of our families in Hamilton County schools, which is a pretty staggering number. You've got a map in front of you that shows some specific numbers for your district, but on screen right now are numbers in terms of the left, just total numbers, and then on the right, the percentage of students that were eligible or families that were eligible for connection that actually accessed it. I think the importance of this map is to show the impact that it has across Hamilton County, that it's not just one area, it's not just the urban core, but it's other parts. We have many rural areas that EPB doesn't service, that we are able to provide hotspots that allowed for high-speed internet connection for families. So again, this is another statistic that's pretty staggering. Out of the 34,000 families that were eligible, only 13% opted out, right? And there are many reasons why families might opt out, but to have 87% that were willing to participate shows a great need in our community. And what's exciting about this is that it doesn't just stop, today, that this is going to continue through year 10 at least to provide these services to our families. Through Deb's leadership, the Enterprise Center has incentivized this. This takes a lot of work on our school's part, from our leaders to our teachers, to encourage families to participate, to really get them to fill out the paperwork, to submit it, And so giving out several staff awards, some awards to schools that they can use for equipment, they can use for incentives, they can use to provide some gifts for the students. So Deb's came out with her team a couple months ago and presented these checks to schools that won these awards, and I believe there's maybe some incentives in the future as we continue this program. So I'm going to turn it over to Deb to talk a little bit about the partnership and some research that's going on.
So I'm not sure how many of you know this, but I spent 32 years as a teacher and a principal. This is work that is really close to my heart. It is the best work I have done in my life. It is so exciting to be a part of this, and I thank you for your support. Because of our shared dedication to the children, and because we have established and collaborative partnerships already built, we were able to quickly and successfully stand up the program. We talk to each other at least once a week. We work together to solve problems that might come up, and we're improving EdConnect every single day. This is a public-private partnership that not only works well, but it leads to results. Many cities that I talk to across the country are purchasing low-speed connections from local internet service providers, projects that require a recurring high-cost investment. We aren't making payments, we are investing. So our investment includes private dollars, private philanthropy, local, county, state, and federal dollars. Our speed also exceeds every other project I've seen, with most families getting an average of 300 megabits download, 300 megabits upload. And we all know from the pandemic how important those upload speeds are. If you're going to be on a shared meeting, if you're going to be a student watching a teacher presentation, you've got to have those high upload speeds as well. There we go. Because our project is so unique, I went one too many, sorry. Because our project is so unique, we included a research component as a way to learn what's going on and what is working and what is not working, and any changes we maybe should make along the way. We're looking at the outcomes of the program as a whole. We're looking at the summary of the changes we've seen because of EdConnect, and our two main researchers are Dr. Damian Biebel. He is an internationally known EdTech researcher from Boston College, and our own Dr. Jennifer Ellis from UTC. On the right side of the slide, you can see the organizations that are represented on our Community Advisory Committee. That group provides guidance and insight to our community and helps structure the topics of importance for research. You can see we're utilizing several research methods. We've completed 450 household surveys, and we've had interviews with teachers, students, and school leaders. And we've been analyzing that data as we receive it. However, a quick survey cannot dig deeply enough to really understand the impact on a student and their family. So we've also engaged in household interviews, reaching a wide array of grades, schools, ages, backgrounds, and geography. And this group has multiple extended conversations with Dr. Ellis, and this work is ongoing. We see this work as more than an emergency response. Lack of home access was problematic before the pandemic, and we're going to close the homework gap in Hamilton County. I have not seen that anywhere else as a goal. So here are a few early findings from the research. Parents are feeling more positive about educational technology. The families are using their access to support education and other opportunities to grow and improve. And the final finding listed here is really interesting to me as a former educator. We all know that parent engagement in schools is associated with improved outcomes for students. For those not participating in EdConnect, we see a significantly lower number of parents engaging with their schools. And those numbers typically differ based on race and ethnicity, with white English-speaking parents engaging the most. What's so interesting about this for me is that for those who do participate in EdConnect, there is almost no difference. We have narrowed that gap to almost nothing, and that really has an impact on the culture in our school, the opportunity for learning, and the outcomes we will achieve. I'm going to hand it off to Evan right here.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Board, for allowing us to be able to present and for the partnership. I'm Evan Freeman with EPB, and we're so happy to be a part of this program, and that at a time our community was able to come together and partner and really serve our students and families throughout. I just wanted to touch real quickly on the long-term focus of our project. Again, this is a 10-year program. That is something that we see going beyond that. Currently, because of our infrastructure that's already built out, and the work that we've been doing with the Housing Authority, making sure that those buildings are connected and those families are connected, we see our financially we're sustainable for the next 10 years, and we thank you again for your contributions to that. Another part that we've been really working hard on is breaking down the multi-dwelling unit barriers and apartment complexes. A lot of those have different agreements with different carriers that have prevented us from getting in there, but we've been able to reduce that number. I know we were in the 40s, and now we're less than 5 that we can't get into right now. And most of our families, the vast majority, we're able to connect those families within 2 weeks of them signing up for the program. So again, we're really excited at this research that's coming out and just going forward, all the possibilities of having families connected and internet not being a barrier to those families. Thank you.
So our next steps, as I said, when we said all, we meant all. We have changed the way that we are recruiting people and the way people can sign up. So we've included sustainable enrollment place on the school portal. So Empower School parents can now opt in. Also, we're going to do more awards for schools and staff. As a former principal, I understand the competitiveness between our schools, and so what we can do to help bring that barrier down is helpful. We are going to continue our partnership with Boston College and UTC, and that ongoing research will help us with our strategy moving forward. And future ready, we are eliminating that homework gap, and we have increased access to post-secondary opportunities. And as Dr. Roberts says, sorry, said earlier, it's really important that we're looking at ways that families are using this resource to improve their quality of life. And any questions?
If y'all will all clear y'all's thing, just so I can. Mr. Perez.
So first of all, thank you very much. Full disclosure, I had the privilege of having my daughter work with you as an internship this summer, and but we won't talk about her or how it went or anything. I hope it went well. But I told her before she did just many of the impressive things that you all are doing, among this being one of them, right? I think this positions us once again in many ways as a leader nationally in really some of this. We've been getting a lot of feedback in the last week from some parents who now are seeing the other side of this, which is a concern of their kids on technology all the time and our schools involved in technology. And it didn't occur to me until you were up here that we actually have a resource of expertise that's really huge with the Enterprise Center, and understanding where the balance, just because we can doesn't mean we should, sort of thing. Like where is that balance? What's our philosophy with technology? How do we ensure that we are managing it well? There's a program I won't speak about here publicly that every parent who's had a kid who has to practice math at home hates deeply in their heart. Like, is that the best way? You know, all these things that that are part of our reality. And so I'm just putting it out there. One, thank you again, because this is a huge partnership, is incredibly impactful, and I'd love to see because I know you. I know you think in the ethic of things too, right? So I love to see that balance of, okay, this is great because it can be done, but what is actually truly the best service to our community overall, and how do we implement that? So,
You know, I think that there are a lot of parents concerned about the amount of time children are spending on their screens. And what we encourage them to do through our Tech Goes Home program is to write a contract. Who's going to use it from 5 to 6, or, you know, trying to share the use. But then we tell them the computer goes in your room at night. The children don't take it, right? And so balancing their need for communication and the social experience with the homework need, and then making sure they have plenty of time outside of the screen. I think it's a really important process. I'd be happy to run a workshop for parents.
I love to do that.
Any other? If not, I'm just going to take a moment. I think this is probably one of my favorite things as a school board that we've invested in. I think we all have these things that show our impact in our district. In my district alone, 3,776 family members have been impacted, and that's about 10% of my district, which is huge on what it does for not just our students, but for the I guess the bigger impact of the community. And I would challenge future boards to be proactive in how do we continue to fund this? How do we look to go past that year 10, that year 15, year 20? How do we do that? And one thing, I don't know if this would be at EPB, but I remember talking about the apartment complexes. Usually they're tied to Comcast or one other one. If that's something that we can work with, like the county planning commission, like to say, hey, if we have students that are in this program, like that needs to be into building codes or whatever else, and interfering there and not having to go back. So, you know, we have 5 apartment complexes that aren't, you know, allowing it, but getting that on the front end, just kind of thinking outside the box on how we ensure our students get that. But the whole team that's worked on this has been amazing, and it's something that a lot of the things that we do on this board outside of operational stuff, we don't see the impact for years and years. And this is something that came, you know, together in the middle of a pandemic, and 2 years later, we're seeing strides that really people thought couldn't be broken. I mean, the homework gap, you know, all that kind of stuff. Last year I was on a call with the Apple's chief education officer, and she had heard about this program. It just shows what this community kind of is about, and coming together to make sure our students get what they need in a really innovative way. So thank y'all.
Thank you.
Despite the fact that I mispronounced your name.
We don't know his name either, so you're fine.
Okay, that will move us on to our next presentation, Future Ready 2023.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. This past spring, I did come before you and discuss the need for an advocacy framework. And okay.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we have it here. Yeah, we do have it. It's not on the screen.
Okay, no worries. And so tonight I would like to share this framework with you, the responsive supports in the area of advocacy. The purpose of this framework, we acknowledge that there are some times when families have a difficulty navigating through the system, and when they come to an impasse over something that has happened, a student-related incident that has taken place at the school, and there's an impasse where it cannot be resolved at the school, that we bring in a neutral person, an advocate, to assist in resolving that. And our desired outcome is that when families bring in this advocate when needed, that they are successfully restored back to their home school fully. And so the structures that we have here, we have 4 advocates that we are bringing in to work with this program. And these are 4 actually folks that are retired individuals, and they are going to serve our community as advocates. They are independent people who are neutral folks that will come in if families feel as though they are not being heard or taken seriously, or their rights are being violated. They can call these advocates. The advocates that we have met with that are going to serve are listed here. These are retired administrators, some recent retired, some that have retired but have come back and worked with us in various positions within the district. You all should probably note Karen Glenn, who was actually our guru in the area of bullying and conflict resolution, has agreed to come back and work with us. Here I am providing the flow chart because one of the main issues that we have seen when dealing with incidents that parents have brought to the schools is that they don't really know the process, and we haven't clearly communicated that, as well as we don't always circle back around and provide closure. And so here, this parent flow chart, once a parent goes to the school and they register a complaint at the school administrators will provide them with this flow chart, okay? And if they do not have it here, they'll actually provide it electronically. They'll provide them with the flow chart, which indicates now that you have registered the complaint, it tells them exactly what's going to happen next, and that within a reasonable amount of time that they're going to begin an investigation, and that they will contact all of the parties that are involved. They will implement an interim safety plan, and that is very important. An interim safety plan will be developed and implemented at the school. They will then gather that information and gathering written statements from all parties that are involved and determine that if the behavior took place, then there's the steps here are very clearly outlined what will happen, and if it is and if it didn't, they could not confirm it, then what will actually happen. Parents at any time along this process can reach out to a family advocate, and they can call my office, or they will have access to that QR code, and they will bring up a digital form, they will fill it out, and then it will come to my office, and then an advocate will be assigned to them at any time along the process. Moving forward with initiating this advocacy framework, we anticipate that we will successfully restore 90% of our students back to their home, their school of origin, their home school. That is our goal, that we will successfully do that. And how we will measure that, we will measure that by students being enrolled in their school and attending on a regular basis, that they are fully taking advantage of the opportunities that the school provides, such as the clubs, the activities, and any extracurriculars, as well as we will provide the parents with a family satisfaction survey as well, and that they will provide us feedback on how we can continue to improve this advocacy framework as well. Are there any questions that you may have for me at this particular time?
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Marcia, thank you for this. That 90% restored and thriving is a bold goal. So I'm excited, and I'll be keeping an eye on that over time. A question that I do have is, I think when we consider a child that's been bullied, we see them often, I would say they have the archetype of the victim/hero. Like, we want their life to be better, right? And we don't want the child that's bullying to do that anymore. And we want consequences for a person that is a bully, right? So what I don't see in here is any discussion of discipline for the person who had the bullying behavior. Is that just unspoken within this, or how? Like,
Yeah,
it happens, and therefore we eventually have a result of this 90%?
Right. So determining that corrective action there. And so I provided you today with that actual flow chart for parents, but that is a part of the actions that take place on that administrative flow chart.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is heartbreaking is when a child who has been bullied feels as though they cannot go back to their own school when they're the one, I mean, they're Ukraine, right? They sat around and didn't do anything wrong, and some big
Right.
Russian bully comes and pushes them around. Like, Ukraine shouldn't have to move, right? Russia should get the heck out. Political or not, don't put politics in that, like, I'm just using it as an example.
Okay.
Okay, so long as, like, that's part of the plan.
Yes, yes.
Okay, just want to put a finer
action,
point on
yes,
it.
corrective action
Okay.
will be a part of
Okay.
the plan when, yes, it has been determined that it took place, and that is a part of the solution.
Okay. Okay, I love the advocacy case managers, and those folks are people that I can really imagine having a great calming effect on everybody involved. So great idea on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes, I just want to know, is this going to be or put up on the website so parents can see it? I just want to be sure all parents know this at the beginning
Yes.
of the school year.
Yes, it will be.
This
it
is
will
going to
be
be
there.
Okay.
It will be there, as well as in the Code of Acceptable Behavior.
Right.
This advocacy framework is going to be there as well. So it's going to be a combined document.
Okay, and I'll let this finish, but I'll have another question for you after they finish talking about this. I just wanted to know about this email that I got from you about changing these two things, and are we going to discuss that at any point as the changes to this? I
In
think
the
it's
Code of
important that
Acceptable
yeah,
Behavior?
the two things that we discussed about the cell phones and things
Cell
like that.
phones and the
is that going to be
substance
discussed at a
abuse.
different time because it's going to be changing the Code of Acceptable Behavior? What are we going to do
Yes.
so parents are aware
Yes,
of that?
it will be. Yes, it will.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think it's a good time to.
Yeah, I think we need to get it out there as well, because a lot of times this is where the bullying comes from, the cell phone piece. Do you want to tell them what we're looking at changing in the Code of Acceptable Behavior?
Sure. I don't have them right, but one of the with the Code of Acceptable Behavior in secondary, in speaking with the principals there, the biggest thing that kind of gives them heartburn are the use of cell phones throughout the school day. And that causes a lot of disruptive behaviors. And so one of the things that they would like for us to happen, that we have actually put in the Code of Acceptable Behavior, is that once the students are violating that upon violation, as they continue to violate those, and the consequences increase. I mean, the consequences increase as the violations increase. So at the one incident, there's a certain consequence But as you continue to be disruptive in having that cell phone out during instruction and those types of times throughout the school day, then there's an increase. So such as maybe, and I don't have them right in front of me, and so I know upon like the third and beyond, then there's the possibility of in-school suspension, and then as it increases, there is the possibility, the fifth consequence and beyond, there could be the possibility of an out-of-school suspension. And is that the ones?
I just
that's
want
the
to be
ones
sure
we
that
really.
parents are aware of that. I really want to be sure we hone in on that with parents. And also, are the teachers going to be given the autonomy to be able, I know some teachers make their kids in
Put
some
the-
schools,
yeah, put the
their
phones in
cell
them.
phones up in a basket or something as they come into the class. Is that going to be up to the teachers? Is that up to the principals? Is that up to us?
It's
What-
a school level
yeah.
decision.
School level decision, okay, but all parents need to be made aware of that and very clear of what the rules are. I think that's one thing we need to make sure they understand. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Yes, during the past school year, anything, when something would come about bullying or any of these types of issues, and I don't think we solve it tonight, but so frustrating for parents when they're speaking with a principal and the principal says, well, I can't tell you what happened to the other child or what their consequences are. That is the silliest thing I've ever heard of. We're in a public building, public facility. If anybody needs to know what's happened so that we can tell the students that have been bullied, hey, you know, the young girl, the young man's going to be out of school for 10 days. I think that's absolutely a parent's right to know that. And for a principal to say, well, due to privacy, I can't tell you. That came up so many times. And I don't know what the correct legal way is to say it or do it, but a parent or student that has been bullied or assaulted or harassed, anyway, needs to know what happened to that other student. So they're not looking around the corner when they get back to school. They need to know what happened. I think that's only fair.
So there's some backup. I mean, this is an overview. There's a lot of backup documentation behind this presentation. For example, when the investigation, one of the things that we kept hearing from parents is just a lack of documentation. So there is one student response form that everyone in the county will use. So when you go to interview a kid or a kid gives a statement, there's one form for that. We're working on exactly what you're asking. There are some privacy concerns there that we've got to work around, but we consistently heard from parents, they don't have to know the student's name, they don't have to know exactly, but they do want some documentation of the consequence that was given to kids involved. And so we're working on the backup documentation that will address those concerns.
Yes, thank you.
If I can, I guess, add some additional information, Mr. Walker. Federal law actually protects the privacy of any information that a school system uses to discipline a student. So this is simply a Hamilton County School Board question. This is something where the federal government has said kids are going to make mistakes in school and they have the right to move past those mistakes. And so to a great extent, evidence of those mistakes remains in-house with the administration. Now that said, Tennessee does allow the administrators under certain situations to share as part of the safety plan for a kid who has been victimized information on a need-to-know basis. And so there is a very fine line. There's not a bright line to say you're always entitled to this or you're never entitled to that. And so on a case-by-case basis, what administrators try to do is to provide assurance of what's going to happen moving forward, recognizing that they can't really go into detail about what happened to the student who's responsible. It's a fine line and it's difficult, but you're trying to balance the legitimate needs of a student and their parents who want to know that the student's going to be safe against the legitimate needs of a student who hopefully has learned from his misbehavior and can move past it. It's a balancing act.
Any other questions? Thank y'all. Okay, that will bring us down to the board member disclaimer statement. We'll start with Ms. Thurman and work our way down.
Okay. I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on the budget or policies may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, etc., may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare that I have a relative who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, etc., may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system. Also on today's agenda, I will be recusing myself from voting for line item D, 1C, 22 through 23, the MOU for Head Start.
I declare that I have relatives who work for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, etc., may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system.
I declare I have a spouse who works for the school system and the board. I guess this is the first time I've been on it. Yeah, who works for the school system and that the board's vote on budget policies, etc., may have an effect on my relative's employment. Even so, I hereby certify that I will cast my vote in the best interest of the school system. That ends that. Okay, we will go down to delegations. We have Taylor Lyons, Angela Favrolo, I always mess up your last name, Heather Madreau, Aaron Fowles, and Rosie Fitzgerald, and Ms. Hill will read the delegate statement.
All right, here we go. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. We have a timer, and when it's done, it's done. Come on up. Taylor Lyons.
Members of the board, Dr. Robertson, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm Taylor Lyons. I am the proud mother of 2 Hamilton County students. I'm also with Moms for Social Justice, as many of you know by now. To be honest, guys, we planned to give you the summer off, leave you alone for a while, but you've made that difficult of late, so here I am, and many of you know why. I am not going to belabor points of policy that we feel was broken, as we have expressed that to you numerous times at this point with insufficient response on your part, which explains my presence here tonight. Suffice it to say, we are deeply disturbed by the unprecedented access you have granted to a highly partisan, special interest extremist group on our public school property to host a partisan event. Opening the door to whatever fringe extremist groups would like to host events on our public school grounds, so long as they cross their finger, wink at you, tell them they're nonpartisan for the afternoon, and fill out the proper paperwork. The KKK. I mean, they are a legitimate 501c3. I hope you would find it within you to tell them no. Or how about the Proud Boys? I mean, we're just asking here, right? Because that's what's happened here. Or will you have a friendly school board member show them to find the proper paperwork online and answer any questions they might have filling it out? See, you can and you did dance around the policy all you want, but ultimately you all had the power to determine whether or not this was in the best interest of our schools. And you chose the path of least resistance. You chose to do and say nothing, which is a loud statement which has reverberated throughout our state, for which this was a test to be replicated. A couple of days ago, our district leadership released a nice statement about standing with our teachers, supporting and respecting our teachers, to which we would wholeheartedly agree, even though not all of you could agree with that statement. But we would argue that part of respecting and standing with our teachers would be paying them more, for one. Secondly, denying access to an organization which has made a repeated practice of attacking our teachers, our librarians, and our counselors with outrageous, offensive, unfounded accusations. we have distributed to you a collection of statements from Hamilton County educators, most of whom pleaded with us to remain anonymous. We had to give them our word that they would remain anonymous, not for fear of their jobs, but for fear of their safety and their family's safety. And I wish I was being hyperbolic. But just last week, we had a beloved veteran Hamilton County teacher publicly, personally, viciously attacked for daring to express an opinion that disagrees with their ideological perspective. You see, this organization is receiving marching orders from their parent national organization, which unapologetically cavorts with violent white nationalist groups. And those national marching orders are to target our teachers, and that is what they are doing. So you can sit there and you can leave the room and you can do nothing. And you can wait until somebody who believes one of those accusations prompts them to dangerous action. We have also included statements from faith leaders and Hamilton County students and how they feel about you allowing this organization into our schools when they have publicly targeted our queer students, calling our queer students GSAs, and after-school social club where they can feel safe and accepted for who they are, sex clubs. You sat there and said and did nothing when that happened in this room, and none of you have rebuked it. None of you. So you want to talk about bullying? Let's do it. And let's talk about the grown adults bullying our queer youth. Am I overtime? I am. I'm so sorry.
You have a minute. You have 1 minute. Thoughts wrong.
You failed those students, and you continue to with your silence and legitimizing those organizations that bullies those students. And you know, we get it. We get what is within the confines of your position. We get what is safe for you politically. And then we get what is basic human decency and the right thing to do. And that is to stand up and speak out for your teachers who are being targeted by this organization. That is to stand up and speak up for the queer youth who are being bullied by this hateful rhetoric. Right now, your silence is your statement, and it is deafening. Because what you permit, you promote. What you allow, you encourage, and what you condone, you own. So we are asking you, united as a community of parents, of teachers, of students, of faith leaders, and community leaders who love and support our schools, who love and believe in our kids, all of them. Is this what you want to own?
Your time's
Because
up.
we don't.
Angela? Angela?
Good evening, Chairman McClendon and the rest of the board. I'm here to talk on policy that's on our agenda this evening, so my tone will be a little bit different. I want to start by saying thank you to all of our outgoing members for your service on this board. I've appreciated the debate and discourse that has challenged me and many others to be more engaged in our school communities and add to the collective interest in preserving public education. This brings me to the final draft of our 4.402 and 4.403 of the policy. This is a little dense. I don't know if anybody can pull that up. For the board members, I have emailed you a copy of all of my bullets because I may move fast, and if you have any questions, they should be there, and also the attorney too, so thank you. Starting at line 29 on the selection of instructional materials policy 4.402, we'd like to clarify if the word offensive is being used in the legal sense of criminal offense or if this is in a subjective sense, and what quantifiable percentage of population is needed to be deemed public opinion, and wouldn't that potentially perpetually harm the already marginalized populations protected by law? Lines 57, 58, and 60, again, this references offensive and who ultimately decides what is offensive, since there's no standard unless found criminally offensive. Lines 67 through 69 on here were added, but they're not highlighted to notate their addition. My question to you all would be to discuss whether that was the language from the state Age Appropriate Materials Act added in, but not noted. And it doesn't clarify whether this applies to purchased items or personal collections, nor does this address the fiscal impact that inventorying hundreds of thousands of articles of material will have on educators and support staff that are already in a labor deficit and overloaded. What is the time frame in which this has to be executed to avoid state penalties, and what are those penalties if they have been defined? I'll move on over to some notes for 4.403, the reconsideration of materials. Line 2 omits the Library of Bill of Rights, lots of discussion about this, but it also included language including protections to the right of privacy and identifying information that most of us find important for readers amongst their peers, review committees, and the public. Line 5 also blurs that line against purchase versus personal items and unclear. I think you all discussed in the agenda on line 37 about adding guardian instead of citizen so that we can encompass an inclusive family unit instead of just parents. Line 45, I'm actually going to come back to that, but I do want to address a line. I know I'm going fast, y'all. 5 minutes moves fast. Line 58 mentions the time frame. It mentions 20 days for a review committee, and I would like to recommend that this be a priority window for a review for any materials that are currently associated with an active assignment, and a longer window and a limit of one item within 45 days for requests without active assignment time constraints, giving the committee ample time to conduct thorough reviews without being inundated and with material that's not actively relevant to students' current learning targets or course materials. In line 100, I would suggest omitting at a particular school and replace with in different learning communities to uphold the sentiment from earlier in the policy or in the criteria of selection that communities have different needs and one community's repeated request should not dictate the access of the whole district. So those are a few things there. I would like to discuss, let's see, line 45 discusses the procedure and timeline in which we will address this with the board. And I would like y'all to share how the board will instill confidence and trust in the public to uphold this policy you write when this whole lengthy process has ensued because of bypassing the district's ability to exhaust their own operations and policies put forth by the state and this board's policy. Moving on to confidence being in some of the topics discussed earlier about our use of facilities and the policies and applications we already have in place that the district handles, why we're bypassing the policy that you write. You should know this policy, and I call you to task to honor it and educate the public on the policy that you created before we bypass it. Would you want a boss who doesn't let you do your job and then gets mad at you for it? Thank you.
Ms. Mudrow.
Yeah, I can't see that clock. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. As you know, we are in a teacher shortage. Teachers are leaving the profession, higher numbers than ever before. This crisis will only get worse if we do not take actions now. But take a deep breath because none of these ideas I will present will add to the budget. They're free. Number one, respect. We need to be respected as the professionals that we are. We need to be respected by students, parents, admin, you, the board, and the general public, including politicians. By changing the climate of one of respect and support, teachers will choose Hamilton County. Students need to be held accountable for their behavior. While we have a code of acceptable behavior, it's not followed. I've written up a student for slapping an assistant so hard her glasses fell off. She was told there would be no consequences since the child didn't know any better. Hands are tied since admin is told not to suspend so many students. Behaviors must be followed up with consequences, not always suspension, but let's be creative in having consequences match the offense. Parents also need to be held accountable for their children while they're at school. Maybe if a parent was inconvenienced by having to go to the school when their child had a major offense and took an active role in creating a plan to prevent future offenses, we would see the suspension rate go down. Some students like to be suspended because it gets them away from the place they don't want to be in the first place. Research shows students who are suspended are less likely to graduate. They also lose valuable instruction time. Parents should be allowed in their child's classroom. I had a parent of a kindergartner who wanted to be in my classroom for the entire week of her vacation from her job as a corrections officer. Okay. On the second day, she told me she fully trusted me and my staff. She was ready to go home and enjoy her vacation. She said my job was more stressful than being a guard for the state penitentiary. Imagine that. Parents need to trust and respect teachers. I welcome parents in my classroom. Teachers and parents need to be partners, not adversaries. Admin, from building admin to central office and UL. The single most important, greatest gift you can give us is time. Our planning time is so short already, and every single one is filled with meetings. Many meetings can be done by email. Please respect us on that. Professional development should be relative and options given. Many of the PDs I've done are repetitive. I've done them before, or they don't apply to my position. What a waste of my time. Principals, if we send you a student to the office for behavior, please do not give them candy and send them back. School board and central office, we need you to visit the schools more. I'm not talking about the walk around dog and pony show, see this classroom, but not this one. Come visit, pop in, talk to the kids, talk to the teachers. They will let you know what's happening. Listen to the students. I bet they've got some amazing out-of-the-box ideas that we have not heard yet. Trust our judgment and our expertise. Support us if we do come to you. And for the general public, I believe some people have a distorted reality of what's actually happened. They hear one negative story and apply it to all schools or all teachers. I invite you to come see for yourself. My classroom's open. Sign up to be a substitute. If you are not available during the day, partner with a school and ask what you can do from home. We've had volunteers make copy, laminate, cut, prepare materials for teachers. Again, you're giving us that gift of time. And finally, for all stakeholders, the bullying really needs to end. Students are bullied. Staff is bullied. It's not okay. Students and staff need to feel safe at school. We need a hotline for anyone to report bullying that will be taken seriously. A dedicated number and email that is checked several times a day by someone at central office. We need actions and consequences for bullies. A school should be a safe place to learn. Again, teachers are leaving education for lack of respect and support. They don't feel safe. They don't feel their voice matters. Go listen to teachers. Ask the ones who retired or left. They'll tell you honestly because they won't fear retribution. Apparently, I don't either. There are more teachers leaving than are joining our profession. You know this. You have the power to change the climate around our schools and change what needs to happen soon, or there will be nobody left to teach. Then what?
Mr. Fowles.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Fowles. I'm the new Tennessee Education Association UNISERV representative for this area, so it's good to meet everyone. I'm here tonight to talk about the Hillsdale resolution. I'm going to try to be very brief about it because this shouldn't really occupy too much of our time, right? The reason it's important to me is that what was said was not just an attack on teachers, but also an attack on public education, right? If there's one thing that everyone in this room can agree on, is that public education is transformational, it's powerful, it's important, it's valuable, and it's difficult. It takes knowledge and wisdom and wherewithal to move those kids from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 to 3 to 4. And that anyone who would distort the truth, who would lie to push a contrary narrative is really just plain wrong. And I think that the board has no responsibility to respond to every headline that's out there, but since this one has come up and it's been raised, I'm just going to urge you and encourage you to push something out the door, to push a resolution, if not the one that's there, push something out the door so that educators, support professionals, administrators, everyone who feels like the board is behind them on this issue that is just really germane and ripe right now. So thank you for your time, and I got it done in less than 2 minutes.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzgerald?
My name is Rosie Fitzgerald, and I'm a mom of a second grader at Westview Elementary. We know already that teachers are the heart of our schools. Recently, community members met with teachers to see how we could best aid them for this upcoming school year. We heard how their workload and the number of hats that they wear has only increased since the beginning of the pandemic. Anxiety, depression, and other mental health problems are affecting our students more than ever, and we've unfortunately passed the burden of dealing with these challenges onto our teachers. The heart of our schools, our teachers, are feeling burned out, unsupported, and unheard. I know funds are limited and resources are scarce, but there must be tools and ideas that we could be utilizing to help our teachers. We heard some great ideas just now. I was dismayed during this listening session to discover that many teachers do not have the ability to regularly submit anonymous feedback to their administrators and principals. How can we address problems our teachers are facing if we're not asking them where we can do better? Targeted mental health support for staff is crucial to a thriving school environment. I'm asking for the board to put together a committee or a task force, just as quickly as we put together a book review committee, to see how we can support our teachers with the goal of evaluating current needs, researching the resources and tools available to us, and submitting recommendations to the district with the hopes that these resources will be equitably distributed throughout. Here are some suggestions I submit, which I hope will just serve as a starting place as actionable steps. Implement regular anonymous surveys to our teachers so that the feedback can fuel positive change throughout the year. I want to highlight a module created by the University of Colorado. It's a workplace mental health module that evaluates employee mental health and offers resources to staff. This module has been adopted by several school districts in Colorado, and it could be a valuable tool to ensure our teachers know where they can turn if they need help. Conduct focus groups to better identify opportunities for improvement in the behavioral health space. Create a space or support groups for our teachers to share with one another what challenges they are facing so they can find camaraderie. Partner with a mental health service to offer counseling sessions to staff. Investigate outside resources. What other organizations can we bring in to grow an environment where our teachers feel a part of our community? I'm not an educator, nor a mental health professional. I am, however, a designer, and I understand the value of a process that involves collecting information, defining the problem, researching and brainstorming solutions, the development of these solutions and receiving feedback on them, and then fine-tuning. I hope that we can implement a similar process to find effective solutions to create an environment of support. We know that when people are cared for, when their fears, stressors, and challenges are addressed, they are given the ability to thrive. I want all of our wonderful Hamilton County teachers to feel like the administrators and the communities have their back, because they've certainly always had ours. Thank you.
Thank you. That will bring us down to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Second. Any items that need to be pulled? Mr. Perez.
I'd like to pull D1F on the bids, and then I would like to discuss E, the board policies, so E1A, B, and C separately.
So you want to pull D1F, and then pull E1A, pull E1B, and E1C. Okay. Any other items? Ms. Hill, did you?
Nope.
Got it. Any other items?
You don't need to pull D1C?
No, yeah, he doesn't have to pull it. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
This is roll call for pulling.
No,
For
the
everything
consent-
other than
yeah,
those.
the consent agenda minus those 4 items.
Oh, yes, but I am recusing myself from the vote of item AD1C, the 2022-23 MOU for Head Start.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. Mr. Perez, D1F.
So I just want to, really two things. I wanted to understand, this is the bid for the contract with, I just lost the name, Stellar Therapy, which is for private and homeschool students to have language therapy, I think it was. And I think, honestly, as a member of the public, I know very little of this, and I think if I know very little as a board member, even the rest of the public may know less, and I think it's valuable for the public to know what is offered through Hamilton County Schools for everybody, so. Anyone?
So I can
Dr.
speak to
Parker,
that.
You seem like you know.
And I may need to bring some other information back, but right now it is our obligation to serve homeschool students, to serve private school students, and if there is a need for us to contract services or support because we don't have enough speech language pathologists or support personnel within the school, many times we try to have a child come to their closest school and receive services there, but where we need above and beyond, which last year we really tipped out quite a few more kids than usual for homeschool and private school services. We have to contract through another agency to help provide for that external group. There are some other needs that we have sometimes for students with very unique needs, but that's where they come in to help us provide support for those unique populations and that kind of outlier group there.
Thank you. I mean, I think I think there's many things that often the public is unaware that the public schools are providing for everybody. Whether, I mean, I'm reminded of COVID when we were feeding anybody. Just come to a bus and get fed. We don't care where you go to school or if you go to school in our system. So in the same way, we are serving the community as a whole with our public funds. So I appreciate that very much. That's all I had on that one.
Do you have a motion?
I move to accept. Vote.
Second.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. Mr. Perez, E1A.
Thank you. So this one actually is the one that's kept me up all night through the weekend. This, for the public, if they don't know, is voting on a state code that we're adding to our policy, which requires transgender students to play sports in the sex with which they were born biologically. I speak often here about the importance of finding a place to belong and finding a place where people know your name and where you are known and loved and cared for. I know this is a complex issue. I know I have read, I read, I get that there are complexities to this issue. I also am the least likely board candidate sitting here to speak about athletics. I know that as well. And as such, I know the limitations I have on that. But I also believe maybe that athletics is not only about winning and losing, but that there are many other traits and character that has grown through athletics, that you learn leadership, that you learn teamwork, that you learn pushing yourself to limits that you haven't pushed yourself. And I am deeply concerned that we even haven't had the debate, right? We are being told by the state, probably because maybe a majority of the state would agree with this, I don't know, that this is the law, and that therefore, as the law, we as a school board need to implement the policy. Otherwise, and I pulled the code just to be sure that I knew what I was talking about, but it says, the Commissioner of Education shall withhold a portion of the state education finance funds that an LEA is otherwise eligible to receive if the LEA fails or refuses to comply with the requirements of this section. So in other words, you will add this, you will do this, you will not discuss this, you will not think about other students, you will comply. Or we will pull your funding. Elsewhere, it explains that we could be sued by students who feel they were, they lost because of an unfair advantage or something along that, and they're worried about scholarships and they're worried. I get the complexity. So the reason this has been keeping me up is because, I'm sorry, it's really been keeping me up, so I may get emotional. I don't get emotional often. But it's because I want our transgender, gay, and lesbian students to know that we do care about you. I want you to know that you belong. I want you to know that in so much as for some of us, we may be uncomfortable, we don't know how to deal with you, how to speak to you, how to manage your reality, that doesn't mean you don't have a place in our schools. That doesn't mean you don't have a right to learn leadership, teamwork, and other great opportunities that come from multiple activities and places. And our hands are tied by a state law that requires that we follow and commit. But I, one of many board members here, want to be very clear in saying that as far as I believe, you do have a place to belong. You do have a place that you can call home. Your teachers love you. Hopefully your classmates love you. And hopefully the administration will stand by you, especially after we've talked about bullying. And I'm sorry that right now it seems like we don't care. And I hope one day we can look back and let you know that we do. So that's all.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I mentioned on Monday that I would be pulling this item if no one else did. I will be voting against this. I don't care that it's a law. I think it is a bad law. Most importantly, I have witnessed in the schools that I represent trans students who have been deeply hurt by other laws that our legislature has passed that target them and make them less of a person. That is not what any student in Hamilton County schools should expect when they walk in the door. And we have just talked about an enormous amount of thought and care in a policy around bullying. And we all know that when somebody's different, people are hateful to them because they're afraid of them, because something's just unusual. But as grown-ups, we're supposed to be better than that. And to me, this is a bullying law. Furthermore, I feel as though it really conflicts with line 7 in this policy, which says the bylaws of the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association shall regulate interscholastic athletics. I do not, it's not lost on me that the biology of male and female bodies presents complex challenges as it relates to athleticism. but we're talking about middle school and high school kids. And I believe that the TSSAA, if left to its own devices, could have figured out how to make sports welcoming to everyone while also protecting the competitiveness of female and male gendered sports. Thank you.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes. Having played sports my entire life, anything having to do with the ball, I usually played it. Me or someone in my family did. There is a difference. There is a big difference. For instance, I played third base playing fast pitch softball. You stood almost right in their front pocket playing there. There's a reason that boys play on third base. They play behind third base at 80 feet where girls play about halfway up at 60. There's a reason for that. If you think a girl can play third base on a fast pitch softball against a guy play halfway home, you've lost your mind. I would not do it. There's no way, because you will be eating the softball. Boys are so much stronger, so much bigger. There is a difference. There's a huge difference. And if you've never played sports, you don't understand. This is a safety issue as well. There's a safety issue. If we're not going to do this, I thank God Tennessee passed this law, what I think should be common sense. Title IX, we just might as well do away with Title IX if we're going to allow this. We could save lots of money by doing away with Title IX. We could just have one soccer team, one soccer coach. Let the boys and girls all play on the same team. Who do you think would have to sit the bench? The girls. When I was in high school, we had a really good basketball team. We went to the state many years. Our boys' basketball team was okay, Joe. You know that. Joe went to Red Bank a little bit before me, but he knows. We always had a good basketball team, the girls. But when we would scrimmage the boys, we would lose every time. A really good girls' basketball team was not better than a mediocre boys' basketball team. It just wasn't. And unless you play sports, you don't understand that. This is about competitiveness, but it's about being fair. We just don't show up on the field to play a game. There are lots and lots of days that you have to go out and in heat like this and practice and hone in your skills. Joe knows this. Joe has been a coach for many years. You know what it takes to make a really good athlete. You take your summers practicing. You take your nights practicing. I can't tell you how many days I used to jump rope 1,000 times a day. We used to do things like that. Even in the summer, we would do things like that. So when boys get to play girls' sports, you're cheating a girl out of a position. Makes me angry, because I know if a boy wins first place, he's cheating somebody who finishes fourth out of the third place spot. It's not right. It's not fair. And like they said, they've never played sports, so they don't understand. This is a huge deal for me, because it's my heart. I've seen many, like Sale Creek, Soddy Daisy, have some really good softball teams. But if you let boys play these sports, it's just not going to be fair. It's not going to be fair to them at all. But like I say, if we spent all of these years getting for Title IX, women, females, fought for years to get equality in our athletic facilities and our sports. We fought for years to do this. And to allow boys to play in girls' sports and go in girls' dressing rooms, I cannot imagine that. I'll just tell you. There's many reasons why I cannot imagine letting boys in girls' dressing rooms, for many reasons. Common sense should dictate that, but obviously it doesn't. So we have to pass laws for this kind of thing. But like I say, unless you've played sports, unless you've been in those dressing rooms, and unless you have worked your heart out to play a position that 3 or 4 boys could come in and put you off a team that you've worked hard for years and years of your career. This is not about making everybody feel better. This is about competitiveness and fairness. And this is not fair to allow boys to play in girls' sports. If you notice, it only usually goes one way. Every once in a while, you might find a girl that wants to play on a boys' team, and nobody ever says, no, you can't do that. You go ahead, you can do that. Because she usually doesn't last very long. Because when boys go through puberty, it's all over. They've bypassed you right on by. So anyway, like I said, having had athletic experience from the time I was 5 years old I know what's fair, and I know what's not, and it's just not fair.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you. I can't believe we're having this discussion. When I saw it on the agenda and listened to some of the commentary or some of the conversations on Monday, I was going to flat come in here and say we don't need to write any of this stuff down. I can't believe the state had to write something down. I can't believe we're having this conversation. But then I started, because I was going to say, no, I don't want to change anything. I don't want to put any policies in place. But then I started thinking about middle school girls basketball coach that cuts a young boy off her team because he just wasn't good enough to make the girls team. You ought to hear the way coaches, every baseball, football, softball coach in middle school and high school, if you cut their little girl on the softball team or little boy on the baseball team, those mamas call up there and say, Johnny made All-Stars on the All-Star C team at Snow Hill. I can't believe he didn't make your middle school team. I can't imagine what a coach, what one of our teachers, one of our employees will have to go through if somebody accuses them of cutting their child because of their gender. It amazes me. And so I'm going to vote yes that we put this in here because I do care about our educators and our teachers. And I just think it gives something else for them somebody to latch on to. And it's going to happen somewhere. It's going to happen somewhere in Tennessee or Georgia or wherever. It's going to happen. There's going to be high school coaches or middle school coaches that cut a young man because he didn't make the girls' team. Maybe he was good enough. Maybe he's 6 feet tall. Maybe he could dunk the basketball. They're going to come up with every reason to condemn our educators over this one. I'm not a bad guy. I care about every student that we have and everything that they go through and all the differences and all that. I'm going to love everybody no matter what. And I'm going to come off as a bad guy when I say I vote for this, but I'm not a bad guy because I'm not going to pretend along with somebody else. And if that comes off as hateful, then it just does. But we can't ask our teachers, our principals, our administrators to continue to pretend. We're going to love everybody for all their differences, for all their everything. But we don't have to pretend along with them.
Okay. Roll call, please. Oh, motion, yeah. Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion to deny.
Second.
Hold it.
There you go.
Hold
Who
it.
made the motion?
I thought I heard Martha first.
Hold
Jenny
it.
made a,
Motion it, Marco?
no, Jenny made a motion to deny. I guess.
Reject, I guess.
So that motion takes precedence over the
Well,
other motion?
If the chair, since the chair recognized her motion to disapprove, then.
We need a second.
Then that has priority if the chair recognized it first. It needs a second. And if it gets a second, then you move for a vote on that. I will remind you that Tennessee law on this point is very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I second that.
Okay.
So it's to deny, right?
Yeah. So a yes on this would be to deny it. A no would be to keep it on the agenda. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Abstain.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mrs. Thurman?
No.
Mr. Walker?
No.
Dr. Wingate?
No.
Chairman McClendon?
No. Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
No.
Mrs. Jones?
Abstain.
Mr. Perez?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, that will bring us down to E1B. Mr. Perez?
So on E1B, again, I mentioned this when we were going through the committee. I mentioned it on Monday. Scott, you weren't here, but the fact that at one point the state's going to pass a policy and we have to pass the policy again, right? We're back there, and so we can have all the conversations we want. The state's going to tell us what to do. With 4.402, I mentioned on Monday, and Scott, maybe you can clarify, but I'm concerned about the term offensive because that's a very general, broad term to me, which doesn't really establish parameters at all. And here's my concern, Scott, and maybe you can, Mr. Bennett, I try to refer to you all by last name when I'm speaking, so I apologize. Mr. Bennett, not Scott. And so my concern here, when I think about this in practice, is that schools, in order to just avoid any tension, will choose the lowest common denominator, I guess. Like, okay, just all of this is offensive, just get out of it so that nobody calls us and has any claim. So how do we understand the parameters and how do you value? And I read the policy. I know that there's a line of what a book would be, but just help me understand.
Sure. So the reference to offensiveness, and this, by the way, is also in some sense a response to what our
Scott,
guest.
can you speak into the microphone?
Oh, yeah,
I thought it was. I'm sorry.
Sorry, can't hear.
All right. Is this better?
It's a little bit. There you go.
There you go.
I think it's this thing running back here. We can't hear. I think it's.
Who ever heard of a lawyer being quiet, right? So the term offensiveness, and this also responds to what one of our earlier speakers inquired about. The term offensiveness is actually a term used in the law by the Supreme Court to recognize that community standards do differ from Chattanooga, Tennessee, to Des Moines, Iowa, to Los Angeles, California, and this local board of education is in large measure the arbiter of community standards here in this town. And so you are the voices of your constituents. They speak their values to you, and you impart that into the school system. So I understand that offensiveness, as it's written, doesn't seem to have any clear parameters, but it's not actually supposed to. It is a term that is intended to evolve over time. So what may be offensive to one community in Hamilton County might not be offensive to another community in Hamilton County. And likewise, 5 years from now, we may have different mores that prevail as it relates to a particular topic or particular issue. So it is intended to be an opportunity to speak to the moment. So that's actually not a weakness of the policy. That's intended to be a strength, and it's something that First Amendment jurisprudence recognizes is a little difficult to quantify, but it's that way on purpose. So that's the first thought. The second thought about offensiveness is something might be offensive, but nevertheless still have value. And there's actually a Supreme Court case that goes back a long time that talks about how it's the task of local school officials to ascertain whether something has value over and above whatever offensive content it may be. The primary consideration here is you can't ban ideas. So you can't say we don't like the content of this, the ideas behind this. We think this is anti-American, or we think this is anti-whatever. The one thing that you can regulate is the offensiveness or the age appropriateness of content of the content, not the content itself. And so that's why we have this long list on page 2 of things that the educators and the committee are supposed to consider to weigh against the offensiveness. And so when something winds its way through the policy procedures, the committee should make a report and make a determination. Here are some factors to consider. This is a work of enduring history. It speaks to, it's acclaimed by, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, there are some isolated uses of curse words or some concepts that are a little troublesome. However, and so that would give the administrative apparatus something to work with. And if someone appealed from the administrative apparatus to this board, it gives you something to work with, something to chew on. So yes, I can see that there is not a yardstick behind the word offensive, but again, that is intended to be one of the strengths of the policy, because we shouldn't be bound by what someone in Los Angeles, California might think is appropriate, and likewise, they shouldn't be bound by something that we think is inappropriate. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it doesn't remove my concern, but it does make sense, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
And so to your final question, doesn't remove your concern. There's a concept in the law, educational law in particular, that we refer to as educator's discretion, pedagogical discretion. At the end of the day, as long as the administration and this board can articulate the values that are important to you and why you're making a decision, courts are going to give you a great deal of deference, because if you're working through a policy that looks at legitimate criteria, and this does, they're going to assume that you've acted in good faith. The policy is designed to keep you from screening out things that ideas that you don't like. We don't want to talk about that topic. That would be an unpermitted censorship. Okay? So you can screen out, really the only thing you can screen out is something that is offensive or that isn't age appropriate. You can't screen out ideas.
Thank you for explaining.
If I was able to explain that, then I'm humbled, because there are classes in law school that revolve around this topic.
That's the issue, right?
And it takes months.
At the end of the day, again, we have a lot of passion around positions, and my concern is when I look at all this criteria, just not having to deal with the heat that will come if we allow or don't allow becomes the highest weight, right? And there doesn't seem anything here to defend beyond that if the group's like, you know what, just remove it, because it's the easiest thing to do.
To that point, and this is actually outside of the age appropriateness bill, there's another part of Tennessee law that requires of all organs in Tennessee government, the State Textbook Commission, which doesn't have an avenue for anyone to appeal a textbook decision by a local board. The State Textbook Commission is going to be empowered to hear appeals from decisions by local boards over library content. Now, how that works, we don't know, because they don't have to promulgate rules on that until December 1st. Now, understand that. Their deadline to promulgate rules is December 1, but we have to have this policy adopted by August 1.
So we may have to change it December 1 due to their rules.
It's possible, but I will say that this bill, the age appropriateness bill, was not pushed by the General Assembly. It was pushed by the Department of Education. And so a lot of lawyers got together and were trying to figure out the best way that we could go with this without doing violence to the First Amendment. And so the age appropriateness bill, I think, will probably track very closely with what the State Textbook Commission is going to do. That remains to be seen, but I think we're going to be fine.
Ms. Jones.
Well, I think Scott just answered it. I kind of just feel like we're spinning our wheels here, because everything that you just said was what people were saying and the community was saying when there was a discussion earlier in the year. And I think it becomes subjective. Like, I think all this criteria allows it to become subjective. And I agree with Marco in that, because what may be offensive to one may not be offensive to another. And then when it comes to us as an administration and as a board, clearly there's going to be all kind of discussion here. So how do you come to the appropriate resolve to ensure that the children or child or whomever has had access to literature that would be beneficial for them if it's all becoming subjective opinion for the decision. Did that make sense what I was just saying?
It does, and I think you're right. You are, in some sense, restating what Mr. Perez said. And the answer to that question is, I won't repeat myself. I'll say something a little bit different. The fact that something may be offensive does not mean it gets removed. The issue is whether it's offensive and it doesn't have redeeming value that balances it out.
Right. I guess what's our safeguard to not go through what we went through months ago?
I'm sorry?
A couple of months ago. Like, what's the safeguard for the board to not go through what we went through months ago?
403, I would say.
I mean, I saw that, but I mean, it still leaves room for. I feel like we just keep going back to the same place, even though there's something in place.
So that's a great question. So your current policy does have an opportunity for people to challenge stuff, but there's absolutely nothing that means that is the only pathway. And so your current policy basically says if someone doesn't like a particular work that's in a book, that's in a library that they couldn't even find with GPS, or on the other hand, maybe their grandchild goes there. They have equal standing to come before the board and complain about something that may never affect them. This policy says if you're going to bring this to the board's attention, number one, you have to have standing. This has to affect your child. And number two, you got to go through the process rather than just dumping it on the board's doorstep. Because if you dump it just on the board's doorstep, you're sitting there and you're thinking, we're not equipped to answer these questions. We haven't read the book as a whole. We don't know. And so what this does is it gives people who have a legitimate concern an avenue to bring these concerns to the attention of the education professionals who, quite frankly, are better equipped to take a first crack at this than the folks on this side of the room. So to your question, what's to keep us from getting right back into the same rut? I think if we follow the policy, we won't, because if you have standing, you now have an avenue to complain, and the administration has clear guidance from the board about how they're supposed to chew on this and work through it. And yes, it may end up back in front of the board at some point, but hopefully not until after it's gone through the process. And then I think you'll have a record, which I think is a constitutionally sound way to resolve this.
I have one more question. 4.403 in line 37, I asked this Monday, it states that any parent, and then of course, or other citizen, and that's removed, who wishes to request review or reconsideration of the use of any instructional material in the school must make such a request in writing through the principal of the school where the material is. My question on Monday was, any parent, what defines any parent? Because my mother is a parent.
Right.
And she doesn't have a kid in Hamilton County Schools.
Right. And so, first, that really should be parent or guardian.
Right.
And so we've discussed internally, we're going to change that.
Okay.
But I do want on the record for it to be clear that when this policy is uploaded, it's going to be parent or guardian. So to your question, Caritza, about any parent, what does that mean? Well, if you look back up to number 2 in that paragraph, so this is line 32, it reads that no parent or group of parents or non-school group has the right to determine the instructional materials for students other than their own children. So your mom is a parent. I don't think she currently has children in the Hamilton County Schools.
And she ain't coming about no books because she said just read a book because she need me to read.
Right. But she's a parent. She wouldn't have standing to lodge a complaint about anything in Hamilton County Schools except her own child or a child over whom she is the guardian.
Okay.
Right? So that goes back to what I mentioned a second ago about standing. If you're going to complain about something, you have to have standing to complain. It has to affect you.
So a regular taxpayer, that eliminates that person.
Under this policy, yes, sir.
That's true.
Well, they could still contact a board member and say, I have some concerns about this. But in terms of whether they would have standing under the state law even to challenge something, they would not. They still have First Amendment rights to say, I have a problem with this, they wouldn't have the keys to this procedure to go through and have a hearing at the school level. Does that make sense? They still have First Amendment rights. They could post something in the Chattanooga, and they could contact a board member. They could go to the county commission.
Ms. Jones. I'm sorry. No, you're good. Mr. Walker.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I learned through the discussion on the library books is that, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, but talking to some librarians, that if I as a parent didn't want these 5 books checked out, I fill out the form, it goes in the system. If I go to check it out, I can't get it. I don't know why, it's been so long since I've been in school, and I was sitting in one of the school libraries one day, and it just hit me like, they're not taking the card out of the back and signing their name on it anymore. They scan it. They don't have chalkboards anymore either. No chalkboards either.
What do you mean by the card, James? I'm just, oh, yeah.
I only let Caritza is the only one that can harass me, not you, Marco. But I think that we need to make that known as well. We could have, to the parents, and let them know. And I'm not all about, I'm all about people needing to opt in versus opt out. But I think that, we have some things in place. If James's parents don't want him to read these 5 books, then fill out the form, give it to the librarian. And again, I know somebody's going to say, well, James, you're backpedaling on that. I'm not backpedaling on anything. I think there's some stuff in the books in the libraries that shouldn't be in there. But the quick thing is, I don't get to choose what Caritza wants to read and what may have more value for her. But I think we need that parent engagement to say, if these are the 5 books or the 25 books, get that in the system at Hickson High School. And then if somebody goes, well, James, their friend can go check it out. If they're going to go through everything to try and get something if they think it's that bad. But I think we need to reinforce that a parent can fill out that form at every one of their schools. If I'm correct or not, y'all let me know. And then when they go up there and try to check out a book, then, that sets off something. You say, no, your parents don't want you to check that book out. I think we really have spent a lot of time talking about it. Started talking about it before I ever got on the board, and now I've already getting kicked off the board, and we're still kind of kicking it down there. But I think we ought to remember that and let the parents know you are in control of what your child checks out. Fill out the form and send it to the school. So anyway.
And Mr. Walker, you said something that I think it's important for the board to hear me say and for the public to hear. This policy doesn't apply simply to the books that are in the geographical location of the library. The statute defines library materials to mean any book or any material that's provided by the school or an agent of the school, so that could be a classroom teacher, outside of the curriculum. So, Mr. Walker here, runs 8th grade ELA, and he's got a collection of books in the back shelf, and he lets people grab them anytime they want to read. By all means, he gets John, Marco, you want to take a book home to read? Help yourself, grab something. So this policy would apply to those as well, because we got to be sure that Mr. Walker doesn't accidentally put the wrong book on that shelf. Something from home that he didn't mean to put on that shelf. The new law applies to literally everything, and I'm sorry that Shannon's not here, but she and I were talking about the logistics of that, and as I understand it, there's a vendor who can actually make that a relatively easy process. I don't know if the superintendent can speak to that, but my understanding is that that's actually not as daunting a task as I think we were thinking it was going to be. You think about that, or is that it?
We're looking at that. I think there's a lot of discussion around what the intent of the legislation meant, though, right?
Well, the administration's position, the administration wrote the statute, and their position is pretty clear. In fact, and I think there was a guidance letter. I think there was a guidance memo that either has been sent out or is going to be sent out. That
yeah, it still hasn't been sent out.
Okay.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes, Scott, you just answered one of my questions, that it was going to be about all materials, and even the books that are put on shelves by other outside organizations, those have to be vetted
Yes,
by the
ma'am.
same.
I knew that was a question that had come up in the committee, so I
Right,
want to be
right.
sure that the public heard that.
Okay, and there's another thing. Okay, so to piggyback off of Joe's question about whether people who didn't have a child in the system could file a complaint, it says, and I was just trying to find, I was kind of glancing over here, I couldn't remember where it was, that until all of the steps had been exhausted, you couldn't address the board.
Right.
So that doesn't apply to them either. If they're outside that, if they're not a parent, then that doesn't apply to them. So they can come before the board and tell us about a book, and they could do that because this wouldn't apply to somebody who's not a parent, right?
Well, the way that I've drafted this, it would give the executive committee discretion to decide whether you want to keep doing that, and that's. So I've written it in a way where if you want to have people coming in and reading books that.
Well, maybe not just read, but come in and say, there's a book here that you might want to check, and parents need to know it's there.
Yeah,
or something like that. I mean, I'm just saying that doesn't apply to them either.
The way this is written, it gives the board latitude to decide how you want to handle that going forward. Okay. I mean, again, strictly speaking, the way that it's written, if you don't have standing, to have standing, you have to have a child who would be exposed to these
But we
books.
let people speak in front of the board who don't have children in the school. So
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
So
the way this is written, the interpretation would be, well, one interpretation would be, and this is up to the board to decide moving forward, based upon whatever precedent y'all want to create. And I would suggest that probably it's the next board that, you know, that seats in September for y'all to decide how you want to do this. But you could say fairly, ma'am, you know, there's a process here. Thank you for bringing this to the attention. You need to take that up with the director of schools, or you need to take that up with your principal. And if the person wouldn't have standing to go through the process, then they might not have 5 minutes to speak. That is an issue that you don't have to decide tonight.
yeah, well, okay, just wanted to think through that. It was just thought I had. Okay, thank you, Scott.
Sure.
Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Walker, I appreciate you putting a fine point on the fact that the hysteria that we have been witness to has been unnecessary. Because in fact, our schools have our students' best interest in mind. Our educators are professional and have always offered parents an opportunity to opt out of reading a book. So that's great that we have that, and I appreciate you pointing that out to everyone. About the implementation of this, I will reiterate my point from last week that I will implore our staff to have backbone so as to avoid weaker, less courageous choices of just pulling things willy-nilly so as not to have to go through this process. Also for the board that will become a panel in September, I would suggest that within the strategic planning that you look at values, like what the vision and values is. We have board goals, but not necessarily board values, and I think those values could be used by those review committees to help further guide beyond the items within this policy. Because I have faith in the team that we have, I don't have a whole lot of worry about this policy with the changes that we've discussed about making sure that it is actually someone who is related to a parent or guardian within a school. That is appropriate, and I would say that if you want to let anybody come and read from a book without context, you're inviting chaos. That is not productive, and I would question if that was a good use of this board's time. I would say it is not, and I pity the board that decides to sit through that again. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
But we are separating the policies, right?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is on for
Board
policy.
4.402.
This would be E1B. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. Okay, that will go down to the final policy E1C. Mr. Perez.
Well, we already discussed it. That one, interestingly, I think provides a lot of safeguards and protections. So I have no comment. I just want to make sure we voted on them separately.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Move to second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. That brings us down to board matters. Our first item is the Cigna building purchase. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any conversation, questions?
I just think I'm sorry.
Yep, Ms. Thurman.
I just want to make sure that the public knows what is going on here. We're working with the county on this. Am I correct? I just want people to understand what's going on.
Right, so the $8 million purchase price is actually being paid by the county, and then we will be responsible for any modifications to the building to make it suitable for a school.
Suitable for school, probably East Brainerd Elementary, from what we understand.
It be some elementary capacity. We don't know the configuration. It'll probably take at least a year and a half, 2 years to modify the building. So we've got some time, but we do know that through the East Brainerd corridor, we're in need of elementary seats.
Okay, I just wanted everyone to know the county is purchasing that building. It's not coming from us. Okay, thank you.
We're spending some money on it, though.
Yeah, the renovation.
The
will
renovations
definitely
we're
spend
paying
money.
for.
Yeah. And if you haven't, I believe Empire Communities has released like the first sketch of their whole neighborhood, and it's going
Yeah,
to be.
and it's a building spending, I forget what our amount was, how many million, 10, 12 million, was it something like that? We looked at maybe the renovations versus building a school for 40 million. It was,
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a great cost saving thing for the district. Do I have we already have a motion and a second? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. This brings us down to the new position request for learning acceleration lead.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any conversation?
Uh,
Ms.
yes.
Thurman?
Yes, I just want everybody to know this is grant funded, and we were told the other night when the grant runs out, the person is going to be told that that position will be eliminated when the grant runs out, correct? Okay, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. That brings us down to the next new position request for homeless specialist.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any conversation?
This is a grant-funded position.
Yes, it is.
No, I'm saying that so it can go on record, so we can keep going.
Mr. Perez, I'll let you go first.
I just think it's very important to restate what you stated on Monday. We have over 700 students that are experiencing homelessness. I'm not an educator. I can't imagine the effect of homelessness on a student's capacity to learn in a classroom, correct? And the stresses and the impacts that brings to their life. And so this is more meant for the public as we're voting for this. Like, this is a position to help the one individual that is assisting over 700 homeless. Can you stand up? Because you deserve an applause for your work. Thank you so much, seriously. You may sit down, not anymore. But you probably are tired on your feet already. No, and so just to assist, this is not a problem that's going away. That's another group that we have, as the state kind of said, don't have a place in our society, and they're not going away. And so I just, when we look at numbers, when we look at results, when we look at achievements, when we look at, sometimes we don't realize that there are over 700 students who every night have to go see where they're going to sleep and who's going to take care of them that night. And those numbers that we look at and we criticize that are just statistics are reflected in that reality. So equally to that group, you belong in our community, you belong in our society, and we will serve you till we die. So thank you for this.
Ms. Jones.
I want to add that if you've not been to the 40th, it is 40th Street, ain't it? I always say across from the cemetery, but if you haven't been to the old city school building, to see the work that she does and the area that she has set up and the process that she has put in place as one person to support these children and these families, then you are missing out. Like, you need to really go see what she has done. It's amazing. I mean, she probably could come help me organize my house, but it's really,
No time.
but it's really amazing the process she's created to be able to support these families, just being one person. So this position is very needed, and I know that oftentimes, and I've worked grant-funded positions, that when the grant is over, it's over. But what we do know and what we see here in our county and in our city is that this population is growing, not decreasing. And so I do think this may be a position that when the grant ends, that we may need to consider looking at sustaining, because based on numbers and data, of course, but one thing is for sure is that we know that children learn better and do better in academic settings when they feel safe and secure and have everything that they need. And so if we're able to support that in a temporary or transitional period of their lives, then I feel like it's our due diligence as humans to do that. And so I want to thank you for what you do, and I'm glad that we're able to provide the vote to support you and some support.
Dr. Drake, I learned today that the 700 number, it's actually 1,500.
Yes, that is correct. It's
I'd
17.
strike my
It's really like
comments.
17. I'm sorry, yes,
That's interesting.
I said over without an exact, but it is close to 1,700 at this time. And part of what Laura's job is to go out and actually locate the students. So when we get calls that there are people that, families that are sleeping in their cars, that's a part of the job that Laura has to do, to go and investigate and identify them and inform them of their rights. And what Carissa spoke of is that Laura really came in and put a more of a care and to give you some dignity. What she's speaking of is that what she set up, typically we would form like a box of, give like a care box to folks, but she really set it up like it's a grocery store, so they can come in and choose the items that they want and not something that's chosen for them. So she set it up more as a store type environment. So
Thank you very much.
If I may say something.
Yes, please.
I do heavily rely on our school social workers. Our school social workers have given me lots of the ideas that I have put into some of my ARP homeless grants that have brought us in right under $1 million for a course of 3 years, just to give some extra services. So I do really heavily rely on our social workers to help me with completing my families in transition paperwork and going out and getting items to families and just kind of like letting me know what they need when they need transportation set up. So they do aid me in this process, but it will be definitely helpful if I could have some additional staff to better serve our students and our unaccompanied youth. So, thank you.
No, I don't have any questions. You can sit down. You probably had a long day. Mr. Perez, you said earlier today something kept you awake. I woke up Monday in the middle, or Tuesday morning in the middle of the night, thinking about the 700 number. and to later find out it's 1,600 students, it puts this year, it puts it in perspective of what our students go through. I woke up, went to East Brainerd Elementary, my mom took me, I got Chick-fil-A every morning, and to even think that we have 1,700, 1,500 kids in this district that are either in shelters, they're sleeping in cars, and then we expect them to get up the next morning and go learn, just boggles my mind. And I think as I reflect off my 4 years, and I have a month and a half left on this board, this community, this county, this city, we have to get our priorities straight. Anyone, I mean, if I knew where the money would come, I'd make a motion right now to give you whatever you needed, because we have to, it's a loss for words knowing, and I've seen it firsthand with my wife being at Eastlake this year, but how any of us, how this is not the number one thing that we're trying to fix as a county. Don't get me started on that. I'll say to that point, there's a lot of discussion about priorities and public money going places in this community right now when we have 1,500 kids sleeping without a roof over their head. And we as a county need to make sure we have our priorities straight. So I'll leave that. We've had a motion, a second?
Need to vote.
All right.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
Yes. Next, we have the resolution to condemn the comments from Mr. Arnon.
Move to approve.
Second.
Can we talk about it for a second?
Well, no, you approve it. You have to approve it.
Okay.
Move it.
I was
then
going
we
to
talk about it.
I was going to suggest instead of doing a formal vote on this, that the board members that wish to sign the resolution could sign it, and the board members that do not do not. If that is, do you want to rescind your motion?
I rescind my
There we
motion.
go. So board members, Ms. Ford has the resolution. After the meeting, we can sign it if you want to. If not, that is fine as well. And then that will be sent to the proper people. Any conversation? Mr. Prez?
I don't have any conversation.
Oh, you're still up there
Am I
from the
still
last
on?
time. Sorry.
I mean, I made my conversation
Mr.
on
Walker.
Monday, so it's still there.
Will the letter be changed reflecting, say, we the members sign below?
Yeah, if you look on the second page or the third page, or I believe it has everyone's names, and we'll just be able to
Gotcha.
sign it. Yeah.
Thank you.
You either
So-
sign it or you don't.
Yeah, either sign it or you don't. Okay, moving on. That brings us down to our legal services report. Y'all have that there. You have events and announcements. We have our district-wide day of service. If you have someone or know someone, you can sign up for that. And then you have the rest of the events. The Back to School Bash is August 6th, and then everyone's favorite day. We don't have first day of school on here. The 10th, right?
Yeah.
August 10th.
Sorry.
You're trying to push it off as long as we can. Yeah, I bring it up, and my wife's like, "Do not."
Debate about the calendar. If we want to revise the calendar.
I'm good. Other than that, we have our next board meeting August 18th, and we will adjourn.